say it again, you've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked. Bamboozled. Led astray. Run amok. This is what he does. I'm going to tell you like it really is.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Take 5, the podcast where we take a cinema legend and take 5 of their films to highlight their excellence and range. My name is Austin Luger.
My name is Eric Martindale.
And welcome to our third part of our Spike Lee 5. The previous two we did were Do the Right Thing and Mo Better Blues. Coming up we have 25th Hour and his newest film, BlackkKlansman. But today we're going towards his grand epic, Malcolm X, based off, obviously, the autobiography of Malcolm X, but also the documentary that was made decades ago about Malcolm X. I learned this afterwards. The co-screenwriter of the movie is the documentarian, because he used that original script to
do this.
Jump off this. It is the story of...
Well, this film had a different... Sorry, this film had a different director for a long time. Spike Lee came in really late in the process.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know the story to that, but so I don't want to go into it. The script was already written prior to Spike Lee coming in. I don't remember the circumstances of that, but I did. Oddly, you would think because
they must have scrapped a lot because the only credited writers are
Denzel.
Spike Lee.
Right, Denzel Washington was already cast. That's a funny thing too, since Denzel had worked with Spike Lee so many times. But I can't remember the circumstances that. We did Mo Better Blues. Oh yeah, I thought there was one thing, but
there's one in between Jungle Fever, which he's not.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead with the plot.
So, it is the story of Malcolm X. It is about a young man who gets involved with a kind of hustler-like character, ends up going to jail. While he's there, he converts to Islam and kind of comes out of jail as a radical who is pushing for civil rights during the civil rights era and becomes one of the most important people during that movement. This is a 3+ hour film that never feels like it.
Not at all.
This is an absolutely incredible movie that is... It was my second time watching it. And I use the website Letterboxd, which is basically a movie diary website. And I saw my review when I saw it a handful of years ago. And I didn't give it 5 stars. I give it 5 stars now. But my thought, my little one-sentence review was, I now want to see 4 more films by Spike Lee about Malcolm X, and then rewatching this and realized, no, they're all here. It's a perfect balance of so many different aspects of Malcolm X to this just really incredible epic. It's a true American epic in a way that, now as more time passes, I'm more annoyed it isn't recognized as, one of the, this should be at every 70mm film festival kind of thing. This should be, a grand tradition of Hollywood. And
I don't want to speculate on why it's not.
I got some guesses.
I'm not. I mean, maybe we should speculate on those, but you're right. I mean, when I went into the film, I was expecting a much angrier film than what I saw. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't know a lot about Malcolm X. From my perspective, I'm obviously not knowing very much about him, and as a young white school kid growing up in America, you hear about Martin Luther King Jr. You don't really hear so much about...
There's one paragraph in the history books growing up.
Exactly. You don't get them, at least not coming from a white privileged home. Mm-hmm. I didn't really get that. So this was my first exposure to really learning about the man. And, from the clips that I saw and the people that had, advocated for or for Malcolm X that I saw growing up, tend to not like white people very much. And Malcolm X was very, angry speaker to me. So it was oh yeah, he's the racist one. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Martin Luther King's the not racist one, of the two big black advocates during that time. And the film does a great job of depicting that. Right. But also, without being angry, it's still humanizing a man and justifying why he might feel the way he does before actually giving a turn on that, right? Because that's not how he was when his life ended. Mm-hmm. So I was expecting to feel all right, I'm going to sit down and feel really bad about being white for 3 hours. I didn't feel that way at all. What I sat down and enjoyed was a fantastic 3-hour documentary about a great American. So that was actually kind of what it was.
Right.
And that was really fun. That was a really fun, nice surprise. And it's played beautifully by Denzel Washington. He's got an incredible performance in it.
One of the greatest performances.
Yeah, maybe one of the greater performances ever. And the one big guy to really jump on the film I knew was Roger Ebert, because it was number 1 in his top 10 for that year. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so I'm kind of with you on that. That it's like it feels less like a documentary and more like a really.
You mean biopic?
Biopic, yeah, sorry, and more like, and I think you used the comparison, so I'm going to snipe it from you. It's more like Goodfellas. It feels more Scorsese inspired, or
sure,
you know what I mean?
Well, especially early on when he's with the hustler-like character, the way he's like presenting his girlfriend around and kind of going through with the confidence of it, especially since he's now starting to use drugs and such, it's better than Goodfellas. I'm also not a huge Goodfellas fan, but he's doing the third act of Goodfellas so much better.
Way better.
Than there was.
When we say the third act of Goodfellas, we mean the bad act of Goodfellas.
Correct.
You know,
and a little bit of the middle one. Like, not that badly. That's like where Rio is like really getting cockier.
Right, as opposed to the other acts of the film, which are much better, I guess is what I should say.
Fascinating because you talk about, like, if this film's angry or not. And there are Spike Lee films where I do think they are angry. I think Chirac is an angry film and should be an angry film. This is a film that is admiring an angry man. And I think you talk about, how we're kind of brought up with this kind of unrealistic look at both men of like, Martin Luther King Jr. is the good one, Malcolm X is the bad one kind of thing. It's more of Malcolm X made people more uncomfortable. And you really see in this that awkwardness, not only among like Malcolm X pushing up against a white patriarchal society, but also even among like people like who knew him. Like he is looking for such a specific type of equality, which is, that phrase feels dumb once I say it out loud, but it is uncomfortable for people just because, like, and sometimes still feels radical in a way that is deeply broken in our society.
Right, and also if you listen to the words that he's actually saying, what the messages are more or less like, we need to learn to love ourselves if we're gonna like be able to live here. And coexist with these other people.
And to defend ourselves of being ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. It needs to be okay that we look the way we look.
Yeah.
It needs to be okay that we act the way we act. We need to be comfortable being black before... If we can't accept ourselves, no one's going to accept us for us. And that sort of messaging and, Timmy's Timey-wimey exists in later film, because it exists in BlackkKlansman as well, with the speech at the very beginning by the guy with the black student unions, very, very Malcolm X-y in that regard. And what he's saying is something that, damn it, like, I can understand being really angry about. Like, come on, like, let's stop trying to, and this, it's very specific and very literal with, like, let's stop trying to look like white people. Like,
and that's kind of what starts the film, too, because Denzel Washington, again, incredible performance. It begins with him in a barbershop, and he's there with Spike Lee's character there, and he wants to have his hair a certain way. In order to do that with his hair, they essentially have to like burn his scalp to get it pressed down the way he wants. And once he does get it, and very funny scene, he's got to put his head in water, whatnot. He's very happy, and he says, "I look white." And part of like his early like learning about this movement is when he's in prison, and it's just a very like simple thing of like, why are you doing that to your hair?
Yeah,
you're literally poisoning and burning your scalp for the approval of society that doesn't
want you, doesn't like
that
you.
That is judging your natural hair, the way your hair actually comes out of your head.
Exactly. And I say doesn't want you, doesn't like you, because that's the position of Nation of Islam takes. Yeah, I mean, it's literally this thing where it is funny, but it's also kind of messed up.
Yes.
Like, and there's an indoctrination of self-hatred that comes along with that, and I think they try to hint at that. I mean, I'm talking about something, I'm obviously wading in the waters of something I don't understand, but this idea that you don't look right, so you need to fix yourself, and he believed that.
Yeah.
I mean, he actually believed that. And that's really sad. And then when he's part of the Nation of Islam, and later in his life, he looks back on that and with a disdain, for trying to look that way and trying to do that, which he should, but that propels him further into the Nation of Islam sort of chapter in this film, which things start to get really interesting, right?
And so that is fascinating because, we talk about this every episode now, of just how many stories we're not seeing out of Hollywood, and how Spike Lee is telling some really amazing stories that should have already had 10, 12 films by now. We have so many films that are not about Islam at all. So, this film is not trying to be the Islam movie at all, but it was just so interesting to see bureaucracy within Islam circles. The great pushback he has is the same thing with seeing any sort of political or even church movies where people want power. Essentially all these kind of things about systems and bureaucracy that are about who wants power and doesn't want to give away power. And as Malcolm X, he's eclipsing us. That's the real pushback he has. It's not because what he's saying, but the older, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying.
It's that to me is very fascinating because Malcolm X is not running for president. In fact, he's not even demanding take this guy's job.
Right.
He actually
we're talking about Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah. He just really believes.
He really
in
believes
this,
and he's passionate about it. And he's a great speaker. So
yes.
And he's getting too popular.
Yes.
And, but within that, you have some interesting things you sort of learn about, and you talk about it being it isn't the great Islam movie, but there are things in it, for instance, you have the bureaucracy within a church, which you see often. We see that all the time with the Catholic Church. You don't see that very often here, whereas, as we go down, the further they get away from, God and it's man, and further down the chain, the sort of manipulation of a message, right?
Yes.
Which was really driving the racism he had towards white people. There were several things that drove it. First of all, his father was probably murdered by the Klan.
Yeah.
That probably happened.
Yeah.
There were, the film directly pretty much says it did. He was told he wanted to be a lawyer, and he was told by a white teacher that he was, as a black kid, he was never going to be that. He needed to find something that he could work with his hands. Yeah. And the issue with that, he wasn't telling this stupid kid, I'm shouldn't have said that, but the less intellectually inclined kid that Malcolm was the smartest kid in the class. He was telling him that specifically because he was black. And so that was a big part of it. And then the other part of it is these people, Elijah Muhammad, these people that have moved very, very far away from probably that original message, which is just, about God and stuff. It's no, we need to separate ourselves in a very, very angry way. And then Malcolm actually travels on pilgrimage to learn about it. And he comes back and it's oh, wait, there's all kinds of Muslims over here that are white too.
And it was so that pilgrimage is so incredibly shot.
It is. It's so beautiful.
It reminded me of Scorsese again because we so rarely get to see filmmakers depict religions that aren't theirs in such an admiring lens. You get a lot of people who are atheists or whatever making really angry movies about the church or anything like that. That's not what's happening here. It reminded me of Scorsese doing Kundun. This is better than Kundun, but Scorsese grew up very Catholic, depicting this lifestyle.
Spike Lee's a Christian too.
Yeah, so. And it was so pure in looking at Malcolm X during this time. And the movie is such a complicated biopic in so many ways, partly because it really, really admires not only what he's saying, how he's saying it, how he's affecting the community, how he's affecting change and what he's doing to people. But there are moments also where Spike Lee does not agree with Malcolm X. And it is always, and he films it differently. It's always when Malcolm X is talking about how women should be used and how women are the really complicated, gross things about power dynamics within relationships within the religion. And that is when you really, Spike Lee puts the camera even closer and almost makes sure I'm not filming this in the same light. This is a man with many complications. I do not agree with all of him, but he's a man that's worth studying, and to see that is really nice.
Yeah.
There are so many times we see Thomas Jefferson in a movie or show. Not a lot of the slave plantation scenes. You know, and that's just not, like, you think you can only depict a hero-like character if he just only shows good things, and Spike Lee gives a really amazing 3-hour complicated look at a very complicated man.
And to be fair, there's not a 3-hour movie about Thomas Jefferson.
No.
So,
but I'm going to write it. And that middle act can be awkward.
Oddly, you would think there would be one about founding fathers, like, individually speaking. That isn't
John
weird.
Adams.
John Adams makes series about several, but it's mainly about John Adams.
Yeah, his Washington's kind of a putz, right?
I don't know. I'd like to see the movie. Oh, yeah. But so you have, so you have that, and there's really a film sort of in 3 acts. Mm-hmm. You have the beginning act, which is before the Nation of Islam. You have him going to prison, which is this sort of angry part of the movie, I guess, if that exists. And then you have sort of the disillusionment with the Nation of Islam. He's still a Muslim, but what ends up happening is he realizes, oh, wait a minute, these people are driving around in nice cars. They're making money off all of this, and I'm not, because I actually believe in this. And he realizes the man that he loves, Elijah Muhammad, may not be such a great guy, and once he starts to sort of unravel these things, his position within the Nation of Islam starts to unravel, and that leads us into the third act, where he goes on the pilgrimage and he comes out with sort of a different message than he had before about, I don't want to say one of inclusiveness, but it's one more of, well, inclusiveness is probably the right word. I think he comes back and says that for the first time, white people can help us. They can't join us, but for the first time they can help our cause, because first we need to learn to help ourselves, I think, is the thing that he says. Yeah. We need to learn to, pick ourselves up, which is strong messaging that he believed in, that, like, look, these people are never going to let us. Yeah. They're never going to include us. We need to learn to love ourselves. We need to learn. So it kind of goes back to that same messaging mixed with what he's learned since he's come in prison. And then the Nation of Islam doesn't like this, and he's gone too powerful, so then there's a plan to assassinate him. There's a thread in this film that's not fleshed out very well, and perhaps it's because it couldn't be. The FBI is investigating Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, presumably, because they're worried about...
they're investigating Martin Luther King Jr. as well.
Martin Luther King, right, exactly. Worried about, I don't know, uprisings, riots, or something.
I think just black people.
Black people. I was trying to say that in a nice way, but I don't know why.
Not gonna defend their actions.
Yeah, exactly. So they're investigating them, and probably knew about the plot to kill him. Mm-hmm. In the film, definitively no. Mm-hmm. I don't know if history is clear on that, but didn't do anything to stop it from happening. Famous picture of Malcolm X during this time, standing at his door, looking out the window with a machine gun. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was, if this really happened, this went on. He knew that they were going to try to kill him. And eventually they do.
And this is the only time in any of the films we've covered so far that I've seen Spike Lee being so sentimental that, like, he's presenting almost every scene like a very, like, complicated layer of Malcolm X. Like, he's going to make his camera a bit different. And it's almost up to Denzel Washington to work as his co-creator here. Like, you're going to be consistent here, and I'm going to keep showing you different shades. But that last section, like, where there's no winking at the audience the whole movie, except for, like, when it is his final day. Everyone in the audience knows it's his final day. Mm-hmm. There's no title card, but the mood changes in a really kind of, like, sad way. It feels like a funeral before its beginning.
And he knows it too.
Yes, and that is also kind of part of the awareness. Mm-hmm. And this is just, like, I'm using trivia now to look at the larger film, but Carlo Esposito, who's been in Do the Right Thing, and very silly character. Over Blues, still a very silly character. This one, he's the man who assassinates Malcolm X, and there's a part when they're at the place where he gave him the speech, and like a kid like bumps by, and he like pats the kid in the head, and then becomes very serious, and that's when he became Gus Fring. The first time in his career.
He's referencing Breaking Bad.
His incredible performance, award-winning performance in Breaking Bad, who is so zen, so still, and for the first time in a movie before Breaking Bad, I saw Gus Fring, and I got chills.
Yeah, and I think so. That's a really interesting way to do it, because you have dramatic irony here, because we know who the killer is before anyone.
Yeah.
The audience does, and that's interesting. I wonder what a cut of this film would look like if he doesn't know. where it's coming from.
I think it goes to that tone of like, this is happening, because you see them plot, and you don't know who's going to have the gun, but one is a recognized name and others aren't.
Yeah, no, I guess what I mean is, like, there's two ways to shoot this. There's the way to shoot it from the perspective of, like, Jaws, where, the chief is on the beach and he's just looking at everyone out there, and he knows that the shark is going to attack, but he doesn't know where, and everything's a threat.
Yeah.
Versus this way, which is everything's set up, we know who the killer is, and it's just more sad.
And I think
that's more appropriate. But it's just interesting
the sadness
that he chose to do it
is
that way.
the inevitability.
Exactly.
Because you're watching, and like even when you're watching Malcolm X like on these like talk shows and whatnot, he's being very articulate and very smart. The way they're doing this like back and forth with these characters, speaking on the political show, there is always a sense of like, well, they're never going to let you like host one of these shows, you know?
Right.
Like,
of course.
You were here as color commentary, and that's it. Like, there is no real allowance and acceptance of his ideas from a larger society, and that is like a great tragedy of the whole movie.
Yeah.
And we got to talk more about Denzel Washington.
Oh, Denzel Washington's incredible in this film. You know, what's funny is I saw criticisms for him being. I mean, these criticisms are 20 years old now, but there are criticisms about him being not looking enough like Malcolm X. He wasn't tall enough. He wasn't light or fair-skinned enough. But my thing about that was like, and a lot of those criticisms like that, I hope came from black people, not white people. But we need to stop this. This whole thing about the character, the actor needs to look like a certain way to play. It doesn't matter. Who cares?
Like, to look identical often aren't that good. Do you see The Crown?
I haven't.
John Lithgow is like the best Churchill, and you would never cast John Lithgow as Churchill on looks, but he's incredible and was better than that Oscar-winning Churchill performance.
Yeah, no, it's just it's just like that's something people always focus on. And I think that usually comes from people that don't watch probably a quarter of the films we have. But it's still like, that doesn't matter. I don't care that Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't look like Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me, and it shouldn't bother you. Like, in this movie, for this 3-hour chunk of time, he's Malcolm X. And also, it sort of belittles what is an incredible performance. The things that were within his control, which delivers a performance, a tour de force of the decade type of performance.
Because he has to do so many different levels of charisma and intensity.
And he has to age.
Yeah, he has to age. Like, he looks so young in those early scenes, the barbershop scene, but also, like, romances. He's so idealistic. I just think about that shot, which is a great tracking shot of him and Spike Lee wearing those ridiculous suits.
Walking down
they are overjoyed about those suits.
Yeah.
And they're, like, snapping their fingers. It's almost like they're in a musical scene.
Yeah, it's great.
And because when we talked about Spike Lee the last two films, incredible, like, complete control over color and set and whatnot. This is still a movie where he has complete control over what he wants to do, but he's really experimenting with light and shadow. And, like, that should be a triumphant moment of these two wearing the suits they love, snapping their fingers down the street. Yet it's still, like, it's so much dimmer than any of the two films we saw. And, like, even that whole,
That's a good point.
The dance they're at, it looks like it's in a basement. Everyone's having a really good time, but it's in a basement that's still poorly lit. Like you were allowed to have your dance here.
You know what I loved about that scene was that it's the only scene where I felt like I've seen this scene a million times, but the difference was they were always all white people, and it never would have occurred to me before this, but a scene like this has never existed with black people in it. Like, it's just weird, right? I mean, because it's this big sort of glamorous party sequence with all mostly black people. I'd say like literally 99%. I think one person, the white woman,
which is what starts a whole new plot.
Which starts a whole new. It's like I've never seen that in a scene before. So like maybe it was time for a scene like that to exist too.
Oh, 100%.
Because we've seen this type of scene a million times. You know, the big glamorous whatever, and you don't that way. So that was kind of fun and interesting.
And, I mean, what does also do then? Because, like, he plays a drug addict so subtly, and he tries to, like, hustle him. And that intensity and that awkwardness of, like, you're going to lose all credibility for the sake of this money real fast for drugs really fast. Like, this is an entire relationship based on trust and loyalty. And if you were scamming me, all this is over.
Do you think that he would have killed him? Because he says later in the film he wouldn't have done it.
It was a really tense moment.
Yeah.
And that actor who plays the guy...
I've seen that guy in like a million things.
Delroy Lindo. He is in The Good Fight, the Good Wife spinoff, and he's absolutely incredible in that. And, man, because like, and then like, to have that happen, also, I mean, like, this movie is really entertaining to watch. Like, it's a really, it's
I don't want to say
homework.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to say that I was surprised at how entertaining it was, but the subject matter, it's like, it's one of those things like when people talk about Schindler's List, which is, you know, even darker than this film, but it's like,
that is like,
a super entertaining film at the same time being
except
like,
for the scenes when it's like impossible to watch.
Right, exactly. And that's similar, but it's kind of similar in that regard, right? Like,
yeah.
I could watch Schindler's List. Schindler's List is incredibly watchable.
It is not for me, but I get what you're saying.
Yes, it's just what I mean is it's a really entertaining film to me, in spite of it being very, very difficult to watch.
I mean, you're watching a filmmaker at the top of the craft, kind of
right?
And
exactly.
You got that here too. But I was just thinking, like, the transition from him being convicted to him in prison has one of my favorite Spike Lee jokes ever in a movie, which is because he is getting his sentence from the judge, and he's right there with Spike Lee's character named Giant, right?
Yeah,
Shorty. Giant's one better place.
Oh yeah. It's always it's like being short. So.
It's like 1 count, 5 to 10 years, 2 count, 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And Shorty does not get.
He thinks it's all adding up.
It's all adding up, and he faints because it is hilarious.
Yeah, they got 7 years,
but he thought it was like 105.
and he just faints. That is great, and the right amount of like. The Spike Lee character wasn't too much in this film. Like I wasn't,
and you thought he was in the movie too much. This is so restraining. Like he almost like feels honored to be like in the movie. Mm-hmm. Like almost like he like had to be there, which is great.
Well, Spike Lee's a really good actor, so it's not that it wasn't like Spike Lee's in the movie too much for me. Mo Better Blues. It was the character. I think he's stealing focus
when he comes to Malcolm X post prison's like first like real like.
Mm-hmm.
Come here, join Islam. Here's what I'm saying. Like, that's a really well acted scene.
Yeah.
Because then you're watching. Because you're also watching Denzel Washington really kind of like he knows scene by scene like the exact degree of confidence that Malcolm X has at that point. You know what I mean? Like he's very like skeptical in prison. He's a little bit less skeptical. Maybe he's at like a 4 skeptical. Like, but then like you watch him more and more confident, and it's just an amazing performance. And you're watching him. See someone who saw him at an earlier age, and just the lack of doubt he has talking to someone from his past is so jarring for Shorty for sure, but also to the audience, like how much this man has changed in a handful of years.
Well, and that's great because Shorty can play the audience in that regard. Mm-hmm. He can give someone the audience to bounce their emotions off of because you're stuck looking at this person. Recognizing the person that they used to be, but that's not coming through anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I recommend the movie.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Again, I think the big thing I want to say is like if people have been hesitant to watch the film because they're expecting an angry movie, it's not.
This should
and it's really entertaining, and it's a very, very fast 3 hours.
This should have already been seen by like this. This should be considered like an American classic film. You want to get mad about the Oscars?
Yeah, let's get mad about the Oscars.
It was nominated for 2 Oscars.
It's crazy. Lost
Best Actor to Al Pacino and Son of a Woman. And it was not for picture, director, screenplay. Could have been for a number of supporting performances, especially like Angela Bassett. But nope, it lost Best Costume Design to motherfucking Bram Stoker Dracula.
The Al Pacino thing, I first of all, Denzel Washington is better in this than Al Pacino is in Son of a Woman. Al Pacino won this award because he's Al Pacino and he had yet to win an award.
Yeah.
Just call it what it is. I mean, that's what it's about. And I don't like to pit actors against each other like that, but I mean, come on, give me a break. Give me a break, man. Especially when you know the Academy loves people playing people that really existed.
And that's why you really get to see a different way of Spike Lee looking at Hollywood, because Spike Lee is an incredible cinephile. The guy's on film festival tours all the time. He is so fluent And like you see him making these kind of references very subtly, much else
like Night of the Hunter, and Do the Right Thing, which I now have seen.
Yes,
so I corrected that.
Aha.
Okay.
And to see Spike Lee go, I did it. I have made the next great American epic, and then to be completely rejected by Hollywood by making the best, like not even like a radical like deconstruction of a Hollywood epic. He made like a new amazing Hollywood epic.
And like you're right. It wasn't deconstructed because it was done in its same sort of classic way.
He did.
It just didn't.
And then
I wonder a couple things. I wonder how much of that was about okay, not the racism of the Academy necessarily, but the fact that the subject was Malcolm X,
which they
blend together, right?
Yes.
But I was going to say that. I was getting to the third point that is, and that makes me wonder, like, what if he did a movie about Martin Luther King? Mm-hmm. Would that have gotten nominated? Selma was up for. Selma's many years later.
I know. Also a pretty good movie,
but still, along that, there's a lot of water on the bridge.
Yeah, it's funny,
especially in terms of the Academy being more progressive.
It was. I forget what critics said this, because like 13 Years a Slave won Best Picture, but I saw a lot of critics say that Moonlight winning Best Picture is really the first black movie to win Best Picture, because like so many films about like black subjects, like we keep bringing up Crash, is like it is about the same thing. We're going to talk about.
It's another story about black people being slaves. Right, yes.
Whereas Moonlight is an incredible story that would not work with any other kind of character.
But Crash sucks.
Crash is terrible. But Moonlight is a beautiful film that doesn't have to be about how racist Confederate soldiers were. I don't know.
Right, you're right. It doesn't have to put people in typical
there was
based on their race.
Hollywood has stories that they are comfortable talking about race with, and ones they are not.
Yeah. I do want to get to, because this is the way I look at it, and I really want to get to a point, and I understand that it's really easy for me to say this, so just know that going in, where I don't care if it's a black movie, or a gay movie, or a white movie, or typical white movie, so, whatever. They're just movies. Yeah. Like, which one's the best? Yeah. Let's not have it win because it's the black movie and it was time. Let's, in the case with Malcolm X, it should have been nominated for these awards.
Probably won all of them.
Because the movie's really good, and that should have been the end of the discussion.
That was kind of the great surprise about Moonlight, aside from the envelope being wrong.
The actual surprise,
It really was like, everyone like, oh man, this is probably the best film of the year. But the Hollywood's going to give it to La La Land, right? We all acknowledge this. Like, Moonlight is the best film. But the Oscar answer is...
And that's happened with films that aren't just like,
oh, sure.
This is the black film, so we're not... I mean, that happens... That happened. King's Speech over Social Network's the best example I could think of.
Sure.
I like both of those movies. One of those is better than the other one. Social Network is better, but King's Speech is such a cookie cutter Best Picture winner. Like, ugh.
Malcolm X, go see it, especially if you haven't. Or for my case, it gets way better the second time, and I can't wait to watch it many more times. But thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week, and we're going to talk about 25th Hour. Until then, you can go to theartofmore.com, leave a comment there about what you thought of Malcolm X, or some of the highlights for you. Also, while you're there, you can check out some other podcasts, including The Immortals, where myself and 3 others review the 1,001 movies, albums, food, songs, and TV shows. Yesterday's episode was our first with the new equipment, and everyone kind of doing some fun stuff, with the German comedy Goodbye Lenin, and the Netflix TV show Orange is the New Black, as well as some other good music and food. Ad Absurdum is the other podcast on the network where 2 lawyers talk about the real-life implications of pop culture. Very fun show. And, I'd recommend the Truman Show episode. It's really fun. Give us a review on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at @TheImmortalsPod. Where can we find you?
Constant Diversions, my YouTube channel. Check me out on there.
You want to recommend a random video?
It's the same 12.
They're good, though.
They're all really good. Watch them all. Yeah. Start with The Last of Us and just work your way back.
Okay. This is the opposite. Like,
there's like
start with the pilot.
There's like a total. There's 6 hours of entertainment right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, so we'll catch you all next week. Until then, I'm Austin Luger.
I'm Eric Martindale.
Bye, everyone.
Beep, beep.
I think you got more sense than any cat in this prison. Why the hell don't you use it? You can't bust out of here like they do in the movies. Because even if you get out, you're still in prison.
Yeah, you ain't lying now.
You go busting your fist against a stone wall. You're not using your brain. That's what the white man wants you to do. Look at you, putting all that poison in your hair.
I think you've been in prison too long, my man, because everybody on the outside counts.
Why? Why does everybody on the outside count?
Because they don't want to walk around with a nappy head looking like...
Looking like what? Like me? Like a nigger? Why don't you want to look like what you are? What makes you ashamed of being black?